It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andi Grabner and Brian Wilson.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Pure Performance. As always, when something like this happens, when it's not the sexy voice of Brian Wilson, but it's just the average, regular voice of Andi Grabner, welcoming you to another episode. Unfortunately, Brian can't make it today, but it is the time, I guess it's the time of our industry right now that we are optimizing things away. Maybe we're just optimizing Brian away with AI. I don't hope so, obviously, because we want the human touch. Talking about human touches, I have invited somebody that actually doesn't live too far away from me, Lukas Holzer. Servus, Lukas.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Hey, Lukas, we just, obviously, I knew that you are also based in Linz. I didn't know that you are living that close, just maybe 2 kilometers away from here, or 1.5 kilometers. Lukas, the two of us, we both had a time when we both worked at Dynatrace, but you now started on a new adventure. Could you quickly just remind me a little bit about the background about yourself before we jump into the topic, which obviously has to do with AI. So this was not a joke to start it like this. AI is upon us, and you are doing some really cool stuff at Straion. But first, maybe some background. Who are you, and why do you think you're here today on my podcast?
Thank you. As said, Lukas is my name. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Straion. So my background comes originally from the IT field. So I was at graphic and communication design at school, and I somehow managed to get into IT and get a good job at Dynatrace, where I learned a ton about engineering and software development. And at some point, the CEO of Netlify, a big Silicon Valley company, just landed in my inbox and asked me if I want to build the build system there, which was super exciting. So that was moving very quickly then. And I always been in sync with my other 2 co-founders because we've all 3 worked at Dynatrace together. So it's Fabian Friedl, who worked until the end at Dynatrace, and my other co-founder, Katrin Freihofner. She had a quick, a longer intermezzo at Elastic. Probably everybody knows it from Elasticsearch, and kind of a competitor of Dynatrace back then. And we all 3 seen this problem in AI space, especially when it came to spec-driven development. So that was kind of where we started the whole journey with Straion, in the field of, everybody wants to build the software with AI back then with a 2-liner, and this doesn't quite work. And this was the time where specs and RFCs and everything was quite a thing. And we've seen that at Dynatrace, Elastic, and Netlify. Yeah, and this was one of the early startings of this.
It's so funny when you say back then, this is what we thought about AI coding or vibe coding. Back then is not that far in the past. So this also shows us how fast things are changing. Now, you mentioned you founded Straion back in 2024?
Yeah, end of 2024, we officially founded it. And we were pretty lucky to get a huge governmental grant from the state, basically. So we could all work full-time from beginning 2025.
Cool. Hey, when I look at some of the material that you've put out there, right? You have some really cool slogans, and I think this is also a great way for our discussion today. Now, we're not going to use this as a sales opportunity today. Rather, I want to discuss with you what real problems do we solve. We are just a couple of years into the whole AI native coding era, or whatever it's going to be called in the future. You basically say AI coding agents are fast, but sometimes they're going off in the wrong direction. And I've experienced this myself. That it's amazing how productive you can be, but sometimes you're just producing stuff that actually either nobody needs or stuff that doesn't work as expected. You also have some really interesting stats that you are showing, and I think these are stats you also have the links from Stack Overflow, from CoderRabbit, from Pullflow. that a lot of developers are very frustrated. I'm quoting here, 66% of developers are frustrated by AI code that's almost right. We see a 23.5% increase in incidents per pull request year over year. And there's a plus 70% of more major issues in AI authored PRs. And this feels like a reality that we didn't anticipate, huh?
I mean, I kind of did.
Yeah.
I think if you check like Reddit or those developer forums where you see like people using AI and how they're using AI, it is kind of, it explains why GitHub has probably the worst uptime ever. And like big companies like Amazon have like really big outages because it's like kind of, as a developer, I had so many pull requests in my life that I just waved through or stamped through because it looked almost right, but it didn't look very deeply into it on every detail because it almost looks right. And I think that's the same with now AI producing code that doesn't adhere to your engineering rules.
Mm-hmm. But let me ask you a question. I've been in the industry since 1999, right? I started my engineering career as a software quality engineer, right? So while I was a software engineer, I had to start in the software quality department, which taught me a lot about software quality. Over the years, I advocated a lot for automated testing, good CI/CD. Shouldn't we have all of the tools available that can detect almost right but not completely right code, whether it's written by a human or an AI automatically?
I mean, that's a really good question. Like, to be honest, I think the point is who defines what is a good quality code? Like, I think that's the first thing. And I think if you're like a solo dev that works on a side project, you're probably really satisfied with what Claude gives you. Like if you have a side project and you just ask it to build I have friends that build they are not in the IT industry at all. They don't know how to program, but they are currently capable of building dashboards and small apps to solve some quick use cases. And if you would ask them, they say it's perfect. Like they are now capable of building things that they previously couldn't do. And it looks good and it feels good. They can deploy it and it works. I even know a very good startup founder friend that has a finance startup with significant revenue that is 100% wipe coded and they have customer traction and it kind of works. It's just, I think that the problem gets bigger or that the quality definition of larger enterprises is quite a different one from a small or mid-sized companies.
Yeah, and I think this is also kind of I want to play a little bit devil's advocate here, so you maybe can tell. I want to poke some holes into what I have been trying to advocate for the last 20 years, right? This is investing in big foundational aspects of software engineering. And as you said, I think many large organizations that have grown their software engineering practices over the years, some of them are really good, but some of them also now, I think, feel it even more where they didn't invest in good automation, in good CI, so continuous integration, in good CD, in good automated testing. Because nowadays, as you said, right, there's the promise of the 10x productivity gain. So if we are using coding agents and we're producing 10x the code, 10x the functions, the features, but we have holes in our CI/CD, it's going to be really hard to catch all of this. It's probably impossible because we were not able to catch it before, but before the output was smaller or less, and now it's going to be really challenging.
I think that the point is, even if you have the best CI/CD, I think you cannot catch everything. That's something we focus with Straion a lot, is there are so many rules that are not lintable or testable because it's normally an engineer would review it based on their experience, on their knowledge. and tell you like, hey, that's the way how we write software, and that's not like lintable via an abstract syntax tree of the code, or it's not testable because it's like such a detail. For sure, there could be some tests like every login flow needs a social login or something like that. That could be probably very good tested. But I think the nuances there are pretty hard. And I mean, test times in CI probably currently rised a bit or spiked a bit.
Yeah, that's true. So then Lukas, let me ask you then the question. If coding agents promise the 10x productivity, but now engineers spend time keeping them on track, that's also one of the lines that I stole from your deck and your website. You flagged it, the hidden costs. What can we do? And what can especially organizations that have been around for a while that are now facing the challenge, they have to become an AI first company, right? I think that's the big challenge. Everybody wants to become AI first or AI. How can they make sure they're not driving in the wrong direction with high speed?
I think there are multiple angles. I would first start on tracking progress. Like there are some cool DORA metrics that really tell your engineering organization, like there are companies like, I don't advertise, but Jellyfish, for example, they can really give you very well insights in how long does it take from like creating an issue until it's really deployed. And those metrics you probably should have upfront in place so that you have something to benchmark and to see if the 10x productivity gain that they're all advertising for is really holding up later then. And then I think requirements engineering got so much more important as a daily job. And like we're talking to a lot of big companies, and often we hear like, yeah, the engineering standards or rules, first of all, they're scattered across multiple sources, or in the worst case, they're just in the head of single individuals. And I think that's a big problem if it's just in the head of someone, because if this person is leaving your company, this knowledge is completely lost. And it's like completely lost for an AI agent as well, to kind of stick to these rules. And I think having a good documentation policy where you have one central place where all the rules are, where everybody knows where to find them, because that's the next thing, because people love to, everybody cooks their own things and every team does their own documentation or building their own knowledge bases. That's not the good way either. I think having one central place where all these rules are stored is already a great start for humans and for AI agents later on.
So then a couple of months ago when I started down the track of not only using AI, but also trying to figure out how I can enable others. As you may know, right, I'm typically trying to do some advocacy for engineers on observability best practices. I have a background in performance engineering. So I try to tell people, if you are a performance engineer and you have your experience over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the best you can do right now is, as you said, write this down in a way that not only benefits the next junior engineer that you're hiring and getting on the team, but also the next AI. So I've basically been advocating for creating your, I don't know, agent files, your skills, your prompts, right? Depending, I guess, I'm not up on the latest maybe terminology, but I think the idea would be, if I am good in my job over the years, I should make sure to not only train the next human, but also write it down in a way that an AI can also benefit from my knowledge. So my question to you now, am I here on the right track by advocating to write everything in the big, large agent file and then I'm done with it? Or is there still something that I need to take care of?
I think it's a very good practice to have it written down somewhere. I think advocating for that is really good. The point is, if you have then huge, gigantic context files and you just pass it Claude and think they will magically follow all those rules, sadly, this is kind of not the truth. So I'm not sure if you've seen the recent hype on LinkedIn, Reddit, or like Hacker News about the ETH Zurich paper on like basically you should delete those context files because they're like making things worse. In general, there is like a big problem with those transformer models, and it's the lost in the middle syndrome. So those models are very good in pick and choose. Like if you have a huge context that's full of information, and you know I need one single thing, this pick and choose works pretty well. Like they can find it. It's like kind of the needle in the haystack test where those models are really good at. The other part is if you take a look at how models are like capable of retrieving parts of the information based on the placement in the context. So if you would map basically the whole context window on like an x-axis where you have like the beginning and until the end, which is the user prompt. Then models are really good in the beginning, like the first parts of the axis where there is a system prompt in recalling that. And they're very good in recalling what was the last addition to this context, like the user prompt. Mm-hmm. But they're very bad, or they're like the more it went into the middle, like the 50% middle, the more it drops on having the capability of getting all of this information. So I'm not wanting to say that big context sizes are bad per se, because I think 1 million context size is great if you can dump like a whole code base in and just say like, give me an architectural overview. So it just elevates basically the flight level, but it's very like in the terms of following all your engineering rules, I think it's the wrong thing to do, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I'm not sure if you also have this on your website, but the PDF that you sent me, is this something we can also share? The PDF?
Yeah, the deck you can already share. We use this just if we're talking to clients to basically have some information there.
Yeah, because you also mentioned this here, exactly the U-shape form, the ETH Zurich research that like obviously you're doing a great job in educating people here. Agents MD and Claude MD don't solve the real problem. You have this big drop in accuracy depending on the size of the context or where information in the context is stored. So if I hear this correctly, Lukas, instead of me taking my 25 years of experience and dumping it into a large agent file, I should rather think about breaking it up into individual pieces and then making these individual pieces better findable, searchable. How does this work? How do I is there a good way for me, or a best practice way to now structure all this?
I think there are multiple evolutions of this. Like having it written down is already great, because with this information you can already go one step further and further then. Like I think the poor man's approach, which works in a lot of cases, is breaking it down into skills and like simple solution. Like we always say, if there are not too many rules for smaller companies, you don't need Straion, for example. You can easily achieve that with a skill, because it's just like 10, 50, 20 rules or something like that. You can put that into a skill, and the skill will be loaded based on a one-line description. The point is, this is like already a bit fragile, because for the audience, if you don't know how a skill works, it's kind of basically a collection of markdown files. That's kind of the context. And then you have a description for the skill. And this is a 1-2 sentence paragraph. And based on this paragraph, which is always loaded in context, it will decide if it uses or loads the other markdown files into context or not. That said, if you have a lot of skills, all those 2-line descriptions will be always in your context on every prompt. And if you probably seen the latest Claude code leak, basically where the source code was leaked, this will be even like re-edited after every prompt, so to enforce that it knows it ahead of the time. So to actually fight against this lost in the middle syndrome. So this is already a good approach for smaller things. Mm-hmm. And for larger enterprises, that's why we built Straion, because what we do is we dynamically can load the right rules at the right time. So we have basically a matching algorithm, a pipeline, a machine learning pipeline that is capable of saying like, hey, that's my scratch pad on Claude, or that's the task. Out of 5,000 rules, what are now the 5 important rules for this one single task? And by that, you don't have to worry when to use which rules, and you don't have to load backend rules into a front-end task. Or we can go even way deeper. If you have a React front-end, or you have some other front-end rules, we just know hey, now just those 3 or 5 React rules are important. So our bet is a bit contrary to the whole industry, because we say the smaller the context or the sharper the narrow, the much more the models will follow your instructions.
Well, it also makes sense, right? If I pick an analogy, if I would have recipes for every dish in the world, and if I have, let's say, recipe suggestions for every spice in the world, then I could give all of these and create different skills, maybe thousands of skills, because there's thousands of spices. But the problem is, if I am here in Linz, Austria, and I know I need to create a dish for somebody that has always eaten pork in his life and he doesn't eat anything else, then probably I can get rid of 90% of the recipes for certain spices or ingredients that I don't even need. So basically, the context would be, who do I need to create something for that already, if I know what to then look at, and also what to exclude. I think that the part is also what to exclude and what to focus on. So you're basically saying a pre-selection of what is important on the task that is at hand. And you are doing this by continuously doing machine learning on all of the skills and all of the instruction files that are out there. And then when instructions are needed, when context is needed, then you are dynamically creating the right context for that problem. Do I get this right?
Yeah, exactly. So we had here a great partnership with the University of Applied Science in Hagenberg. With their AI lab, we've developed together this algorithm, which is our proprietary software, and that's our USP, to be honest, because competitors don't rely on this smart matching. They more rely on you have to place it in certain folders or directories. But we just think engineers shouldn't worry or care about where those rules live, and it should just work.
Cool. Got a question for you then. So I completely understand, if I go back what I learned today, I understand that the 10x productivity gain promise doesn't work for most organizations because the context got so big. We're creating a lot of stuff, but when the quality that we're creating is not great because the context is too big. Also, large enterprises may not have all of the checks and balances in place, the good CIs and CDs that can validate and see that this is actually not good stuff. Now, there's your approach where you say you're dynamically generating the right context. If I now think about this, how do I know which context was used when I created certain code? Because maybe later on I need to kind of somehow figure out how was this generated. Do you also then keep track of what you generate? Do you generate it all the time for every prompt? So can you give me some technical details on when you're creating this? And also is the generated and provided context and also somehow persisted and stored in my session so I can also go back in history and understand why certain things were created?
That's a really great point. Actually, that's something we're currently working on, which is not released in the product yet. Our team is heavily working, it's called trajectory files. That's kind of a new standard establishing, which collects all the information about your session. And we are currently in the progress on visualizing that and showing you exactly those traces that you see exactly hey, in this session, for this pull request or for this code change, those rules were taken into consideration and those rules were not needed at all. So that for us, we see this especially in the beginning where we have to get trust for the quality of our system, that we can really provide this trust in this form to the engineers.
Cool. For me, it makes obviously a lot of sense because, thinking with all of the organizations that I've worked with, I think this would be one of the questions that comes up. Because if I have right now all of my instruction files, my agent files in my source code repo, and I basically know at which time I had which instructions, it's easier for me to audit and to basically also show to the compliance department, like what was the input. But yeah, that's a cool thing. I really like, though, I mean, the great thing with what you have built here is there are clearly studies, right, that show the technical problem on why these agents are super fast, but sometimes go off in the wrong direction. And you have a very nice solution. Now, technically, can you still explain to me when does your generation kick in? At which point does it kick in?
So we said we want to keep it as simple as possible. So all you have to do is have all the rules in Straion, and the developer just installs a CLI, and the CLI is invoked via a skill. On the setup, we just create the skill, and the skill is just a wrapper that tells Claude, Cursor, GitHub Copilot how to use the CLI. So that's basically all. So we are using a skill as well, but a skill for instructing how to work with the Straion CLI. And the Straion CLI has then different commands, like get rules, find rules, etc. Or and these commands are then used with basically in Claude. You can tell Claude, hey, let's work on this issue and please follow all the rules. So it will pick up the Straion skill and give it everything which it has in the scratchpad. So Claude has like kind of some internal memory scratchpad, and this will be passed via an API call to our backend. Our backend then runs our pipeline, passing that in, and giving you back like the 5-10 rules that are now important for planning this whole thing. And with these rules, it will start the plan. And then later on, it will validate the plan with a different hook, where it then gives like the finished plan or the spec basically back on our backend. It will pass again, like that are the rules that are needed. And the cool thing is, we don't do the validation. We don't do the judgment. We just do the matching. So your coding agent, your Claude instance with your own model is doing that. So this works very well with bring your own model. Like you don't have to pay us for token usage or whatever, because it runs solely on your plans that you already have in the companies on Claude or GitHub Copilot or what works best for you. And Claude is just getting the right context to accomplish a good result. And that's it. Like we don't do the validation. Claude is doing that. We just give Claude all the information it needs to get to the right result.
Do you also keep track of, I'm not sure if it's possible, do you then keep track of what type of context that you pulled in really made sense and which context was never used? Is this also an option? Yeah.
That's exactly what I said with the trajectory.
Yeah.
We do a self-improvement here on like, hey, this was helpful or this was not helpful. Like think of reinforcement learning for this.
That's cool.
And especially what we've seen so far in our benchmarks as well is like really, it really is important how a rule is formulated. You know, the articulation of a rule can heavily influence how good it is picked up or is followed by like a coding agent. And this is something a lot of people underestimate when they are just writing like those files on their own, because they think like, hey, I'm just writing it that and that way. And often the results are very bad, depending on the language they choose for following those rules. And that's a huge thing we're focusing here on Straion as well, to benchmark and validate what is like a really good way to express this for a machine readable format. So what's the best way to pass all this information to the coding agent so that it really follows all those rules?
Now you mentioned you have some benchmarks. Do you have any numbers on what type of improvement people see with your approach?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of just putting out numbers, because you see that all over the place in the industry that people just drop numbers and random numbers. So we just open sourced our benchmarks, therefore, so that people can run it on their own repos. our approach to benchmarking is quite different than the industry does with the SWE benchmark or others, because they often focus on a very small problem that is single turn, like just add a flag to this Go CLI. We think that's not the real world example. So instead, what we did is we took like a huge repo outside that is open source. In this case, like the Elastic Kibana or Argo CD, that probably a lot of your audience is knowing. And we just picked an open source contribution there. Like there are issues and pull requests. And what we did is the issue is like our starting point for the agent. Then we've extracted out of this repository like rules, like coding guidelines, convention, etc. And we have 3 scenarios. One without any additional context, one with a handcrafted agents MD file that contains the exact same rules as we have in Straion, and one with all the rules in Straion. And then we checked out the commit before this pull request got merged. So we have the perfect testing ground. And then we ran the 3 scenarios. And in the case of this Argo CD or the Elastic Kibana, we could get to 90% rule following with Straion and 5% with the agents MD. But as said, I don't like dropping here some random numbers. So the best is people should just check out our blog post and see the open source repo, and they can set up the benchmark on their own to see it on their own code.
That's cool. And I think you shared the blog post with me as well. So folks, if you're listening to this on the Straion.com website on the blog, there's a couple of cool blog posts that are discussing. I think this one was this one the one that was written by Katrin? Yeah, exactly. March 26th, the 90% rule adherence. Yeah, that's cool. It's impressive and also great, obviously, that you do this on public projects, so people can definitely follow what you're doing. Hey, so you were founded in the end of 2024. So now it's, let's say, 18 months into your journey, and a lot of things have already changed. Are there things that are worrying you? Are there things where you say, "Wow, this is as an industry"?
Yeah.
Is there anything that is worrying you?
To be honest, I would be super afraid if I'm now a student or graduate somewhere and deciding for software development, because how fast this job changed is crazy. Like, it feels like if you talk to people that love to actually code and write code themselves, I think this will dramatically change in the next year how this job is look like, to be honest. I think I don't say that this job will be replaced. There will be software developers. I think it just changes how it works, this job. And I think it will be way harder for juniors to get into this industry. And I think that's kind of our responsibilities as companies to find a way to integrate or learn juniors and help them to get them up, because otherwise we will have a problem in 10 years or 15 years if there is no one coming after.
Yeah, I think we had this discussion, the same arguments also with our previous podcast guests, that obviously we need to make sure that we're not forgetting about the next generation of software engineers, or whatever we will call them. In the end, it's just a new tool that has been given to us, but a tool that is also dramatically changing the way we do things. Right? It's like, I'm not sure if the analogy makes a lot of sense, but before the automobile, we had a lot of people that were riding horses and horse carriages, and they had to figure out how to get a horse from A to B and feed it and pauses and everything, right? And then the automobile came, that dramatically changed everything. Now self-driving cars are upon us, so that will also change a big industry, big time, and so we're seeing this change here as well. Yeah.
But I mean, if you take a look at an SRE, like, you have great AI tools. I'm now capable to be like, if I get an incident, if I get a page, I am capable mostly in 5 minutes to find the root cause through AI, because I have an MCP server that can analyze or grab the right data, the right errors in the right moment. I don't have to dig through some dashboards or whatever. I just give it like a lot of observability data, and it will point me to the right things in really no time. And even with like Kubernetes read-only access on clusters, this is amazing. But you still have to know what to do here. And it's like the AI, like I wouldn't give AI auto access currently to my cluster to fix something. So I think there is still a lot of human creativity needed here in this case. And I think creativity in terms of architecture will be still a huge thing.
Yeah, especially, right, coming back to your own stats that you pointed out, if I'm just using AI now in these cases where systems fail, if I only have a 5% success rate in the AI following my rules right now, if I'm not smart with how I define my rules, then I may get the wrong answers and I may do the wrong things as necessary. So I think in the end, what I take away from all of this, it's amazing how fast we can move. We need to move into the right directions. And for that, we need to make sure that the AI or the agents get the right rules at the right time and are not overwhelmed with too many rules because they will pick the wrong rules in a very high percentage. Yeah.
To be honest, if you try to argue with an AI, I had this where I was super convinced by the statements the AI was providing. And I felt really, yeah, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. And then I let the AI challenge itself. And it convinced me then from the different point of view. So I think it can get very tricky in finding the right arguments. And therefore, it's really important to have the right context in there.
Yeah. Hey, and Lukas, to end on a positive note, because I asked you earlier, what are you worrying about? But maybe let's end it on a positive note. What are you excited about?
I mean, I think we are in the greatest area now. Like people can build their dreams. They don't need huge, big agencies to build their stuff. Like if someone wants something, they build it. And I think this accessing like this era of builders, I would call it, that everybody is empowered to build what they have in mind will probably boost our creativity because a lot of great ideas that were buried through missing potential skills in software development are now enabled to build maybe great startups, companies, and building great products around that.
It is a really good future to look forward to. And let's also hope we figure out how to then enable the next generation of engineers to leverage the tools that bring their creativity into fruition. Yeah, that's really good. Hey, Lukas, really all the best with Straion. Folks, if you're listening in, there's a lot of links, obviously, that we are going to post, whether it's on the website, the blog posts, also in the document. We'll see how we share this document or if we share some of the links that you have in there. I always say to people that start their own companies, I'm always impressed by anybody that makes the bold move to start your own company, because it's not an easy thing to basically end your safe haven of a regular job. So all the best for you and your adventure. And I'm pretty sure we'll have you back at some point and see where Straion is going, where the agents are going. I do hope you're moving fast and always into the right direction.
Cool words. Thank you very much for having me. Stay on track.
Exactly. And Brian, next time I hope I'll have you back, but I hope you are good with everything we discussed today. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.